Marcus Clayton, 38, was serving a life sentence at the Huntsville unit, a maximum security prison in Walker County, Texas, for the murders of 3 women committed in Houston in 2008. Since his conviction, he had maintained that he was innocent, stating that his case was the result of deliberate falsification of evidence. Between 2008 and 2020, Clayton filed over 20 appeals and post-conviction motions to state and federal courts. All filings were denied without evidentiary hearings. In 2019, Clayton was assigned to the laundry department. The position required collecting, sorting, washing, and folding inmate uniforms and bed linens. Processed laundry was packed into large industrial bags and sent to off-site facilities for pressing and chemical treatment. Clayton's job placed him in regular contact with contracted delivery drivers. Trucks from a private cleaning company entered the facility loading bay on weekdays between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., usually making 3 trips daily. The loading bay was located near the service gate, which was separated from the main prison yard by a chain-link fence and secured by 2 guards. Security policy required each outgoing bag to be sealed with a numbered tag, recorded in a manifest, and inspected before leaving. The manifests were printed in duplicate, with 1 copy kept by the prison and another by the driver. On October 9, 2020, Clayton was working the morning shift in the laundry, starting at 7:30 a.m. Surveillance logs later showed that between 10:40 and 10:50, a guard rotation occurred. During this 10-minute period, the new shift was not yet positioned at all assigned posts. The loading process continued during the rotation. At approximately 10:46, Clayton entered the rear section of the laundry storage area, out of the line of sight of the remaining guard, and climbed into a laundry bag filled with folded uniforms. The bag had been placed on a cart intended for the last outgoing truck that morning. A civilian driver arrived at 10:50 in a box truck registered to Cleantech Services Inc., based in Conroe, Texas. The driver, working alone, began loading the bags with the assistance of 2 inmates. The bag containing Clayton was loaded without inspection. The manifest for that shipment indicated 26 bags, but electronic scans registered only 25 unique tag numbers. The mismatch generated an automated notification in the facility's control system at 10:54. The alert was not addressed immediately because the supervising officer had temporarily left the control room to coordinate the incoming shift. The truck exited the facility at 10:58. Standard policy required a visual check of cargo before departure, but the gate officer signed the release form without inspecting the load. The vehicle traveled north on Interstate 45 toward Conroe. According to later interviews with Cleantech's employees, the driver made 2 scheduled stops before arriving at the company's main plant in Conroe around 12:20. The first stop was a small processing facility in New Waverly, where several bags were offloaded. It is believed Clayton exited the truck at this location. Witnesses recalled seeing an unidentified male leave the dock area on foot, wearing dark pants and a gray sweatshirt. Meanwhile, at 12:55, Huntsville unit staff conducted an unscheduled headcount in preparation for a cell search. Clayton's absence was noted, and an emergency count was ordered. By 13:20, prison officials confirmed that he was missing. A facility lockdown was initiated. The Texas Department of Public Safety was notified at 13:35, but no statewide alert was issued until 14:10. By the time the first patrol units were dispatched to the New Waverly facility, more than 2 hours had passed since Clayton's departure from the prison. Review of nearby traffic cameras later suggested he had been picked up around 13:05 by an unidentified driver in a dark sedan traveling eastbound on State Highway 150. The sedan was observed crossing into Polk County at 13:47. Jurisdictional communication delays compounded the response problem. Local police departments in Walker, Montgomery, and Polk counties received notifications at different times between 14:30 and 15:15. No coordinated roadblocks were set up before 1600. By 1730, Clayton was believed to have left Texas. The exact route remains unverified, but phone records, vehicle sightings, and witness statements later indicated he traveled through Louisiana during the evening hours. No confirmed images or direct law enforcement encounters occurred that day. The escape was officially confirmed to federal authorities on October 10, 2020, at 9:15 a.m. The U.S. Marshals Service joined the search, but Clayton's initial movements had already taken him several hundred miles from Huntsville. Following confirmation that Marcus Clayton had left Texas and was likely traveling east, investigators began evaluating individuals who could be potential targets. Priority was given to persons directly connected to his conviction. Within 24 hours of the escape, federal and state agencies identified Judge Charlene Moore, 54, of Fulton County, Georgia, as the most probable focus of concern. Moore had presided over Clayton's 2008 murder trial in Houston and had delivered the sentence of life imprisonment without parole. Judge Moore resided in a detached two-story house in a suburban area outside Atlanta with her husband Derek Moore, 57. Derek Moore was a retired police officer who had served in the narcotics division of the Atlanta Police Department until his retirement in 2016. Property records indicated the couple had lived at the address since 2001. They had no children living at home and no recorded history of domestic disturbances or prior police protection requests. The basis for concern regarding Clayton's possible focus on the Moores stemmed from multiple letters recovered from his prison cell during routine inspections in 2013, 2015, and 2019. These letters, addressed to various recipients including legal aid organizations and unidentified individuals, contained direct accusations that the Moores had been involved in fabricating evidence in his case. In one confiscated letter, Clayton wrote that the prosecution's case was constructed with rehearsed witnesses and flawless forensic exhibits that could not have occurred naturally. In another, he claimed that Derek Moore had leveraged connections in narcotics enforcement to ensure Clayton's arrest and conviction. The letters also referenced a belief that Derek Moore had prior professional contact with key police witnesses in Clayton's case. On October 10, 2020, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Atlanta Field Office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation jointly assessed the threat level to the Moores as elevated. At 1400 hours that day, 2 uniformed patrol units from the Fulton County Sheriff's Office were assigned to remain near the residence. Their operational instructions included maintaining visual contact with all entry points, monitoring the surrounding street, and reporting any suspicious persons or vehicles. The Moores were formally advised by FBI special agents and sheriff's deputies to relocate to a secure location until Clayton was apprehended. At 1520, the couple declined relocation, stating they did not wish to disrupt their lives and would instead rely on their existing private security system, which included motion sensors and exterior cameras. The FBI noted in its internal report that this decision increased the potential risk of a direct confrontation should Clayton arrive at the residence. In addition to law enforcement presence, private security contractors hired by the Moores provided supplemental coverage. However, the contractors' schedule overlapped only partially with the assigned police patrols. Fulton County Sheriff's Office records later confirmed that on certain days, gaps of 30 to 45 minutes occurred during shift changes between the contracted guards and police units. From October 10 to October 12, no confirmed sightings of Clayton were reported in Georgia. Nevertheless, the security detail maintained a consistent watch. During this period, the FBI conducted interviews with individuals who had corresponded with Clayton in prison. One former inmate stated that Clayton had never stopped talking about the Moores and believed he would settle it himself if he ever got the chance. This testimony reinforced the existing threat assessment. On October 12 at 1840, an unmarked sedan was observed driving slowly past the Moore residence. A deputy on post noted the vehicle's license plate and submitted it for review. The plate was traced to a rental company at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. The rental agreement listed a false name and an inactive prepaid debit card. The vehicle was not located again that day. On October 13, 2020, 4 days after his escape, surveillance footage from a convenience store in Madison, Georgia, recorded images of a male resembling Marcus Clayton, operating a late-model gray pickup truck. The vehicle was identified through registration data as a rental obtained in Montgomery, Alabama, under the name William Crane, later determined to be fictitious. Payment had been made using a prepaid debit card purchased with cash, preventing direct linkage to Clayton through financial records. By the morning of October 14th, traffic monitoring systems documented the same vehicle entering the Atlanta metropolitan area via Interstate 20. Investigators believe that within hours of arrival, Clayton began systematic surveillance of the Moore residence. Statements from neighbors later confirmed the presence of unfamiliar vehicles parked intermittently along the street, in positions affording line of sight to the property. Clayton's methods included frequent changes of transportation. Rental agency records and witness observations indicated he utilized at least 4 different vehicles between October 13th and October 15th. The gray pickup, a white cargo van, a silver sedan, and a dark sport utility vehicle. All rentals were obtained using different aliases and paid for in cash. Security personnel at the Moore residence noted that some of these vehicles remained in the area for extended periods during patrol gaps. Recovered photographic evidence from a discarded digital camera later confirmed that Clayton had documented the property layout in detail. Images included close-range views of the front and rear entrances, fencing, garage doors, and external lighting fixtures. Additional photographs showed law enforcement patrol vehicles stationed outside, suggesting that Clayton monitored and recorded the timing and duration of guard presence. Parallel to these developments, independent researchers with prior interest in Clayton's case began releasing archival material obtained through public records requests. The documents revealed that in 2008, prior to his arrest, Clayton had been listed as a cooperating witness in a federal corruption investigation. The targets of that probe included a senior officer in the Houston Police Department, several members of its narcotics division, and Derek Moore, who at that time was still serving in the Atlanta Police Department but had previous professional contact with the Houston unit through interagency operations. Records indicated that Clayton was scheduled to testify in a federal court in early April 2008 regarding alleged falsification of evidence and unlawful asset seizures by these officers. 1 week before the scheduled testimony, he was arrested and charged with the murders of 3 women in Houston. The victims were identified as residents of the same neighborhood where Clayton occasionally worked as a delivery driver. At trial, the prosecution presented forensic evidence including fingerprints, DNA traces, and a .38 caliber revolver allegedly recovered from Clayton's residence. The search warrant return listed the weapon as found in a bedroom closet. Clayton maintained during proceedings that he had never owned such a firearm. In 2015, a medical examiner, whose identity remained undisclosed in official records, provided an anonymous statement to a criminal justice advocacy group. The statement alleged that autopsy reports for 2 of the victims had been altered before submission to the court, specifically adjusting estimated times of death to align with the prosecution's timeline. This claim was never entered into court proceedings due to lack of verified authorship. Between 2009 and 2020, Clayton submitted multiple motions for retrial and evidentiary review. Each was denied without a hearing. Notably, the presiding judge in all post-conviction rulings was Charlene Moore, the same judge who had overseen the original trial. Court minutes showed that in each instance, the denials cited lack of new and material evidence as the reason. In the late evening of October 14, 2020, law enforcement surveillance of the Moore residence consisted of a single marked Fulton County Sheriff's Office patrol vehicle positioned across the street from the property. The assigned deputy's shift began at 2000 hours and was scheduled to run until 800 hours. At approximately 23:46, the deputy left the location in order to purchase coffee from a convenience store approximately 1.5 miles away. This absence was later estimated to have lasted between 9 and 11 minutes. During this gap, Marcus Clayton approached the Moore property from a wooded area at the rear of the lot. Investigators believe he entered the area on foot after parking a vehicle several streets away. The exact location of the vehicle has not been confirmed. Evidence recovered at the scene included boot prints, consistent with the size and tread pattern of footwear later removed from Clayton at the hospital. At approximately 23:49, Clayton cut the wiring to 2 external surveillance cameras mounted on the rear of the residence. The private security system's control panel logged the loss of signal at 23:50. But no immediate alarm was triggered, as the system was configured to send periodic rather than real-time alerts for camera outages. Derek Moore was inside the residence at the time. Based on the sequence of events reconstructed from 911 call logs and ballistic evidence, Moore heard noise near the back entrance and armed himself with a .40 caliber semi-automatic pistol kept in the kitchen area. At approximately 23:51, Moore opened the rear door and confronted Clayton at close range. The exchange of gunfire began almost immediately. Ballistics analysis identified 6 discharged 9mm casings and 4.40 caliber casings in the doorway area. 1 .40 caliber round struck Clayton in the upper chest, while 2 9mm rounds struck Moore, 1 in the shoulder and 1 in the upper torso. The fatal injury to Moore was later determined to have been caused by the torso wound, which penetrated a major blood vessel. Despite being injured, Clayton forced entry through the back door at approximately 23:52. Moore collapsed in the kitchen area and was no longer able to continue returning fire. Clayton moved toward the interior of the residence. Blood evidence and drag marks indicated his mobility was impaired, consistent with the gunshot wounds he had sustained. Judge Charlene Moore, located on the second floor, locked herself inside the master bedroom and called 911 at 23:53. The recorded call documented her stating that her husband had been shot. An intruder was inside the house, and she was armed but would not leave the room. SWAT and patrol units were dispatched at 23:54. The nearest unit, the same deputy who had left moments earlier, returned to the scene at 23:56 and took cover outside the front entrance until additional personnel arrived. At 23:59, Clayton was in the living room area, where he collapsed against a piece of furniture. His movement slowed significantly due to blood loss. At 00:00 on October 15th, the first SWAT team member entered through the front door, followed by 2 additional officers. They located Moore's body in the kitchen and proceeded to clear the remaining rooms. Clayton was found at 00:01, still conscious but unable to stand. According to one officer's written report, he attempted to form words but was unable to speak coherently. Emergency medical personnel arrived at 00:03 and began treatment. Pain control measures were administered at the scene, after which Clayton became non-responsive to verbal questions. At 00:07, officers confirmed the house was secure, and Judge Moore was escorted outside. Clayton was transported under guard to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. Moore's body was removed from the scene at 1:12 a.m. Marcus Clayton was admitted to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, at 00:29 on October 15, 2020 under armed guard. Medical records later obtained by investigators indicated he sustained 3 gunshot wounds, 1 to the upper chest, 1 to the abdomen, and 1 to the left thigh. Surgical intervention began at 00:48 and continued for several hours. Despite multiple transfusions, his condition deteriorated due to internal bleeding and organ damage. At 9:14, Clayton was pronounced dead. The official cause of death, listed by the attending physician, was exsanguination resulting from multiple gunshot wounds. Clayton never provided a formal statement to law enforcement after his apprehension. The only verbal attempt at communication noted in reports occurred at the crime scene, when officers described him as trying to speak before being administered pain medication. Following his death, the Fulton County Sheriff's Office formally closed its active investigation into the attack on the Moore residence. In a statement to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation dated October 16, the lead investigator wrote that Clayton posed an immediate and lethal threat to Judge Charlene Moore, and that the use of deadly force by the victim's spouse was justified under the circumstances. Between October 20th and November 3rd, 2020, 4 former members of the Houston Police Department's Narcotics Division were arrested on unrelated corruption charges stemming from an earlier federal probe. Court filings in those cases referenced falsified search warrants, altered evidence logs, and improper coordination between officers and confidential informants. Advocacy groups submitted formal petitions to the Texas State Investigative Committee, requesting a posthumous review of Clayton's conviction and an inquiry into potential misconduct by Judge Charlene Moore. On November 12, 2020, the committee issued a written response declining to open a case, citing insufficient substantiated evidence to support allegations of judicial wrongdoing. The response noted that the denials of Clayton's retrial motions had been consistent with procedural standards in place at the time. Public demonstrations occurred in multiple cities across Georgia and Texas in the weeks following the decision, with participants demanding a review of all convictions issued by Judge Moore during her tenure. No such review was initiated. Clayton's body was released to family members on October 19, 2020. His relatives, in a written statement provided to local attorneys, expressed that he had died without hearing words of exoneration, and that the truth of his case was buried with him. They declined to pursue further legal action, citing a lack of resources and the improbability of success against state institutions.